Stick 'em up!
Oh my god! What are you doing in my house? Is this about the Sabrina Carpenter feet
You're
pic?
damn right it is. When are you gonna learn that you don't live in a house, little bro? This is an apartment.
But it's a new nice apartment. Look at this spacious modern kitchen. I have a permanent green screen set up. Look at how much bigger my bedroom is. And a nice closet for sound dampened audio recording. Man, life sure is great.
In the arms of the angels.
Ah yes, the new year. We're all freezing, the festivities are over, so we're all back to work and school, and we're all broke because we spent $2,000 on gifts for people who don't even like us. What isn't there to love about the start of a new year? However, none of this applies to me really. I work in retail, I'm always broke, and I don't get holidays off. However, I am obviously a little extra broke considering I moved into a new apartment. So let's take this as an excuse to look at a game that I picked up on a discount this holiday season. Sniper Ghost Warrior. What a mouthful, good lord. I saw this game at the game store when I was looking for Xbox 360 games, but naturally I came to my senses and I didn't buy it on the 360. I went home and I bought it on Steam, so we're going to be looking at the first 3 games in this series, Sniper Ghost Warrior 1, 2, and 3, which ran me about $20. I've heard pretty good things about Contracts and Contracts 2, however, I'm not going to be talking about those. If you want to review those, go somewhere else. I hear they're pretty good. Sniper Ghost Warrior 1, 2, and 3, though, let's get into it.
Sniper Ghost Warrior 1 and all of the SGW games were made by the Polish team CI Games. Prior to the release of SGW1, they were primarily a budget developer working under other teams and making a ton of World War II and puzzle games. For rather understandable reasons, this wasn't where they wanted to be in the industry, especially not while Call of Duty was on the scene, so in 2008 they decided to ditch the budget life and set their sights on Sniper Ghost Warrior. As the first big budget title for the Polish team, it sold quite well, with sales between 1 and 1.5 million copies across all platforms after just a year. However, things weren't all sunshine and rainbows. The game did not receive any slack from critics, with reviews ranging from harsh but fair to absolutely brutal. And I'm here to tell you that they all had a point. Sniper Ghost Warrior 1 is not very good. You guys know those Steam banners in your Steam library? The one that appears above the game when you click on it? Yeah, this game is perfectly summarized by it. Dudes in a jungle with snipers. In terms of presentation, this is kind of it. The game is set in a fictional South American country, and as a US Special Forces team, we're doing an imperialism and trying to kill a dictator. Yeah, that's the whole plot. Now, I understand that this inherently means you're going to be spending some time in the jungle, but the entire game? Seriously? No, wait, I lied. There's an oil rig mission and also a dig site towards the end of the game. For 80% of the entire game, you're looking at the same thing. Trees, grass, enemies wearing green, and rain. Whoever decided this was a good idea must have made love to the jungle map from Black Ops 1. Now, I know your game is set in South America, but did the entire game have to be in the jungle? South America has much more than just jungle, and if you're really this bankrupt for ideas, maybe don't set your game in South America. Despite the fairly decent fidelity from a small team in 2008, this game is an absolute snooze fest to look at. This may seem like a small thing to get worked up about, but 1, this is only the start, and 2, you'd probably have strong feelings too if you looked at the same thing for about 4 hours. Moving on from that, the story is absolute cheeks. As mentioned previously, you're a US Special Forces team who are tasked with killing the dictator of the country. In terms of a broad strokes overview, that is quite literally it. Very little happens in the game. There is one point where we get a nuclear missile schematic and our teammate is a traitor.
Objectives.
Fucking traitor! You fucking traitor!
Captain Dragon deeper into the
But he's killed off about 5 seconds later like an absolute chump. About the only enjoyment I get from this game's story is laughing at the line delivery and seeing how few movements the mouths have. The main playable character, Tyler, sounds like a guy you would meet on Grindr who really wants you to think he's hot so he can get those cheeks, and everyone else sounds like side characters from the dub of Dragon Ball on the CW when I was 5.
Now this may come off as me saying the game is unintentionally funny, and therefore worth a playthrough, but all of this plays second fiddle to the biggest problem, the gameplay. It's not very fun.
Sniper Ghost Warrior 1 has two primary gameplay styles, mid-ass sniping mixed with mid-ass stealth, and the worst Call of Duty copy I have ever played. Let's cover the sniping first because it isn't as bad as the big dumb shootouts. Surprisingly, this game does have a wind and distance system, which means bullets won't go exactly where your crosshair is. Ooh, so realistic. And even better, there are in-game ways to tell how hard the wind is blowing and how far away the target is. So immersive. However, that doesn't matter, because on easy and normal there is a dot in your crosshair that shows where the bullet will go, accounting for wind and distance. Now this is also a thing in good games like Sniper Elite, but it's much less abusable there. Sniper Ghost Warrior is a sniper game where accuracy is irrelevant. There are like 2 snipers in the game, and no matter which one you use, every single bullet will kill in one shot no matter where it hits the enemy. And on top of that, they're all semi-automatic. Why bother with accuracy when you can just mag dump the 300 bullets you have and one of them will kill? This becomes even more of an issue when there's more enemies, but we will get to that. This begs the question of why do you have a sidearm? Well, firstly, it's the USP. Who doesn't like the USP? Not me with these stock-ass sound effects. But secondly, it is more comfortable to use in close quarters, which are unsurprisingly often for a game with Sniper in the title. Very often, this game will require that you deal with some of the worst stealth mechanics I've experienced in a semi-modern video game. Now, this isn't one of those games where if you get seen once, you lose. That would be horrible, and then this video wouldn't exist. Most of the time, stealth is optional, and mainly happens by accident because enemies are either hawk-eyed mutants or brain dead, but the very few sections where stealth is required confused me. In these sections, you lose if the alarm is triggered, and I do not know how that happens. I have had times where the enemies have shot me and the alarm didn't go off, and I have had times where literally killing all of the enemies without being seen caused a fail. The best thing I can give it is that would have been adequate in the 90s, maybe, but by 2010 we already had MGS, Splinter Cell, and Hitman, just to name a few. The game's attempts at being a stealth game are laughable, but what about when stealth is merely optional? Well, the game has been at that too. Remember when I mentioned how overpowered the sniper is, one-shotting everything and no need to focus on wind or distance? Yeah, well now you're so far away the enemies are incapable of detecting you exist. This is how the few non-linear sections go. You stand far away and center your screen on the bad man. To put it bluntly, the sniping gameplay in this sniping game is largely just plain boring. I've had more in-depth and satisfying sniper mechanics in mobile games. This really puts into perspective how good open-end stealth games like MGS5 are. Most people understand that MGS5 is good, but they don't realize how catastrophically bad it can go when done poorly. Now, what about the shooty bang bang?
I said, why would you ask me that?
Every single time this game made me go into a firefight, I audibly groaned. I legitimately think COD on the DS is more fun than this. Y'all don't fuck with Black Ops 1 on the DS like I do. I started off this video complaining about the visuals, and when bullets start flying is when it actually becomes a problem instead of just being boring to look at. With fairly slow-paced or long-range sniping, we don't have any issues, but when the game shoves enemies up your ass, the visibility is so bad I can't even tell what is happening. This is compounded by the fact that we're a special forces team who are using iron sights like it's the 70s. We also may as well be firing grease guns because they shoot about as straight as my boyfriend and kick like a mule. It just isn't fun to fire guns in this game. Not even factoring in the enemies, it is unenjoyable to do the main thing you do in a first-person shooter. In every single loud section, I wished I had a sniper rifle, just because I can actually hit what I'm aiming at. The assault rifles are so inaccurate it hurts. The assault rifles also do very little damage, so it feels like I'm doing nothing. It makes me wonder if I'm missing or if the game just didn't feel like dealing damage today. Most of the time, it was a mix of both, believe it or not. Now, get this. There was a sniping section where I accidentally replaced my sniper with an assault rifle because you can only carry one primary, and this is what ended up happening. Does that look like fun to you? Now, the enemies. The goddamned enemies. As mentioned before, these guys are either the most observant things ever coded and put into a video game, or basically just a body to get shot, and in combat it is not different. Sometimes they'll miss every single shot, and sometimes they'll make you go through medkits faster than you can say Wagadoogie, his catchphrase. This game really puts into perspective why just about every single FPS hopped on the regenerating health trend. Having half of your health chunked by random enemies in a game where it feels impossible to shoot back isn't very fun, and it becomes less fun when the damage is permanent unless you use a pickup. On a related note, the game's poor design also helps to show off how masterfully scripted and crafted Call of Duty is. This game is about as scripted as my videos. You walk into a room and it spawns 5 enemies and then they kill you in 4 shots. If you run fast enough, then you can actually break almost all of the scripting and have enemies spawn behind you. Reminder, firing your gun is like taking 7 laxatives and then trying to hold it in. This isn't fun. What alien playtested this? Look at this gameplay and tell me this looks like fun. Listen guys, there's only so many ways I can say shooting guns isn't fun, the enemies piss me off, and the scripting is bad. Just at a fundamental level, this game made me more frustrated than anything. Let me remind you guys that development started a year after COD 4 released. By the time it hit the 360, we had Modern Warfare 2, and by the time it came out on PS3, we had Black Ops 1, and you guys know how much I love Black Ops 1. This game hasn't aged poorly. It was made when it came out, and everyone said so. 3 out of 10, this game makes me tired.
Hey, this is a note from Editor Spoopa. The first level and the last level are exactly the same. So I guess the game made the developers tired too, because it's literally copy-paste. Jesus.
Now, technically Sniper Ghost Warrior 1 does have a short DLC campaign that adds on to the story, and also a dedicated multiplayer mode. However, the servers are shut down, and I don't want to play any more of this game. So let's move on to greener pastures. Sniper Ghost Warrior 2. Wait, hold up. This is Checkpointer number 2 speaking.
Dude, you missed a game.
How have I already missed a game? We just started.
You haven't talked about the real first game in the series, Sniper Art of Victory.
Dude, I am not reviewing that, come on.
Yeah you are.
I don't know how he does it, but he's just so convincing.
My feelings on Sniper Art of Victory are very complicated. On one hand, I think objectively this is a worse game than SGW1, but it doesn't make me as mad as that game, and I think it's because this game knows what it is. Sniper Art of Victory came out in 2008. The same year, CI Games decided to switch away from the low-budget market. I don't know if you can tell, but this is clearly a low-budget game. It's clear as day the moment you start the game that this was on a shoestring budget. I have not been able to find a source that can definitively state if this game was before or after the decision to abandon the budget market, but what I can say definitively is this game sold poorly and reviewed poorly, and for good reason as well. I do not mean to keep bringing up Call of Duty for direct comparison. These games are in different genres. I just want to illustrate where the military shooter was at this point in time. This game came out 6 months before World at War, and it sure doesn't look like it. The game hardly looks better than the original Medal of Honor, and definitely doesn't look better than its sequels. But if we're being honest, that isn't this game's biggest problem. If you read the reviews on Steam, you'll already know. This is a sniper game where the hitboxes do not work. Whether or not a bullet kills an enemy is a roll of the dice. This may seem crazy to say, but it feels like less than 50% of the shots just straight up do nothing. What is crazy is this game has the secondary crosshair that accounts for wind and distance, just like SGW1. You will spend most of your time centering this crosshair on an enemy's chest and then firing 3 times before he dies. The enemies also seem to have the same problem as SGW1. They are damn near blind and deaf unless you shoot right at them, but once they notice you, they will instantly burst you down in half a second, even at long ranges. This is significantly less frustrating than in SGW1 though, because the game has regenerating health. While you may not be able to fire back due to the blanks we're loading apparently, you can just get into cover and reposition. On the topic of firing back, I don't think I ever successfully killed an enemy with a pistol in this game. Be it the game's existing hit registration issues or the fact that you can't aim the pistol, I simply died every time I tried. Luckily, this game isn't trying to be a big budget action game, so you rarely need anything more than your rifle, and this gets into why I like the game more than SGW1 even though it is an objectively worse product. Sniper Ghost Warrior 1 tries to be a big budget action game, and every single time it does that and strays away from the relatively decent sniping gameplay, it sucks. This game doesn't have that problem. This is an honest-to-God sniping game. A sniping game with fundamentally broken mechanics, but it stays in its lane, and for that reason I actually preferred my time with the terribly broken game. Also entirely unrelated, I have a good bit of nostalgia for the PS2 era of shooters, so
Anyway, back on track. In case I haven't been clear enough, Sniper Ghost Warrior 1 did not do it for me. I think the execution of most things in the game was quite bad, and overall I didn't really want to finish it. It felt like a slog completing the game, and that's not how a game should make you feel. They should be fun. So, Sniper Ghost Warrior 2. Is it fun? Is it good? I hope it's fun.
Sniper Ghost Warrior 2 is once again quite mid, and it's sad that it is. SGW2 was released 3 whole years after SGW1 and uses the Cry engine, the engine that powered the much-memed Crysis. Right off the bat, you can tell that much more money, time, and resources went into this game. This game looks significantly better than the last one. The first level almost blew me away with how much it improved on SGW1 in the visual department. Each chapter features its own sniper for you to use, something that was rare in the last game because there were just only like 2 weapons. They also come with a new location and a unique visual theme. The final chapter in Tibet really stood out to me. This is a vast upgrade over the variety offered in SGW1 of jungle, jungle, and more jungle. The entire presentation is putting in work. Sound design, animation, and especially voice work are all much better this time around. I found myself being at least mildly invested in what was actually happening this time. I still won't be giving this game a plot summary because it isn't above your average made-for-TV army flick, but the presentation is definitely better. Sadly, this concludes the praise for the game. Yeah, I'm gonna be mean now. Staying on topic with presentation, the writing in this game is bad. It's bad in all 4 of these games, but it's really distracting in SGW2 with how much better the voice acting is. Almost every line in the game is Whiskey Tango 2 clicks Oscar Mike.
No. A hostile got the intel. Can't wait to go home alive to my pregnant wife when I stay alive and am still alive.
The gameplay is where SGW2 really fails. This is one of the most linear games I have ever played, to the point where it is just downright boring once you realize what you're actually doing. Luckily, SGW2 has entirely removed the big action shootout levels that sucked in the last game, but they haven't replaced them with anything. This game is about 5 hours long, and most of that time will just be following a character or following a preset path where there will be one enemy to shoot. I think it's great that this time around they focus in on the stealth sniper gameplay, but the level design is so bad and restrictive that it prevents me from getting any enjoyment. It is not an exaggeration to say that you will mostly be following characters around, or following a waypoint, or following a character and then doing a scripted takedown. Sometimes the game lets you perch up in a sniping position and you have to clear the area. Technically, SGW1 had these, but they sucked in that game, so I'm glad they're better here. Sadly, even these sections are plagued by linearity and lack of player agency. You'll typically be watching over a squad and they'll go, "Hey, we need you to shoot this guy," and that's it. There are technically sections where your only goal is to kill all enemies, but much like other bad stealth games, there is a right and wrong order to kill them in. While I criticize the execution of the more open-ended sections in SGW1, I don't think removing them entirely and putting the players on rails was the right move. There's a little worm in my brain that tells me SGW2 is so painfully linear because the devs couldn't remake the AI. If we're being honest, the core problem with SGW1, Art of Victory, and SGW2 is how bad and simple the AI is. I think SGW1 sold well, so they put all the effort into making the next game pretty and covering up the issues by making the player follow a pre-made path. Admittedly, it took me a little bit to notice that SGW2 has the exact same AI as the last game, so clearly they were somewhat successful. It makes sense to me that because the game sold well, they wanted to make the sequel as presentable as possible to the average consumer. This game is much more focused on appearing to be a nice polished game than actually being one, and clearly it worked. This game still sold well.
But of course, these are all reasons and explanations, not excuses for why Sniper Ghost Warrior 2 is the way it is.
Right for the
As
asshole.
it stands, Sniper
Right.
Ghost Warrior 2 is another
Asshole.
game that just
3,
isn't very good.
2,
I found myself getting
1.
bored with short.
Oh shit.
Here we are. Sniper Ghost Warrior 3. The end of our journey. Has Sniper Ghost Warrior 3 escaped the depths of mediocrity? Do we finally have a story that is almost serviceable? Is the gameplay finally fun? Well, almost. Sniper Ghost Warrior 3 started development in 2015. A big year for stealth games, and I'll get into that. This is by far the most ambitious game in the series. The first game made from the ground up on the new generation of consoles, featuring a grand open world and weapon customization and a lady with hella ass. So of course it got delayed. When it finally released in 2017, Sniper Ghost Warrior 3 followed the series' tradition of reviewing poorly but selling well. Once again, I agree with most of these poor reviews, but before I get into any of that, I have a disclaimer. Even before the game officially released on PC, there was quite the kerfuffle about the beta not running well. People with all sorts of PCs from weak to powerful, desktop to laptop, wondering why the game ran so poorly. Before anyone says, "Oh, you have a bad PC," I surpassed the recommended specs, and also tons of people had this problem. No matter what graphics I run, no matter what fixes I try, this game runs super inconsistently. Sometimes it hangs around 50 to 60, and sometimes we're in the low 30s, but most of the time we're jumping all over the place. This results in an incredibly irritating and clunky play experience. Even when Steam says I am at 60 FPS, it doesn't feel like a smooth 60, and really that's what matters most. I do not have any personal experience with the console version, but at least in regards to PC players, I cannot recommend you purchase this game. The recommended specs are a lie, and even people with much stronger PCs report wild inconsistently. If this doesn't bother you, or you're on a super PC and think you can brute force it, I won't stop you, but I will not advise a purchase solely because of this problem. Barring the performance though, the game does look decent. It's the best looking so far, being made for the PS4 and all.
Woo! That was a great start. Regardless, the footage you'll be seeing in this part of the video was recorded at 1080p, 60 FPS with fast VSync enabled in my GPU settings, because that's a fix the developers actually recommend people to do. I don't know why the game performs like this, it absolutely should not, but this is the performance that I got, so this is what I'm going to show you guys.
Sniper Ghost Warrior 3 is by far the best game in this series, but only because it's a pretty shameless copy of MGS5. Yeah, this game is what you get when you want MGS5, but mom says we have MGS5 at home. I could end the video right there, but I should probably explain for people who haven't played MGS5. First of all, if you haven't played it, you should. It is by far one of the most fun stealth games ever made. Secondly, I am not making this comparison for the sake of dragging this game. I'm just acknowledging the reality. Anyway, MGS5 is a fully open-world stealth game that gives the player the ability to tackle any mission however they want. This is not just possible because of the great level design, open-ended world, and smart enemy AI, but it is also because you're equipped with the gear to tackle everything however you want. For plot reasons, you're in charge of a private military company, and that does indeed mean you can hit everyone with a tank. You can hit people with whatever you want actually. Even when you don't take advantage of the massive arsenal available, only doing basic sneaking, choking dudes out, the game is still amazingly fun and well put together. SGW3 wishes it was any of these things. To start with a compliment, the enemy AI has finally been improved after 3 games. Enemies now have searching behaviors and do a little scared animation when alerted, a little stopgap between standing still and beaming you in the head. Otherwise, they're still blind and deaf, and it's simpler to shoot everyone instead of actually trying to sneak past them. One new mechanic I'm quite fond of, however, is interrogations. These work identically to MGS5. Enemies can be interrogated for relevant mission details, enemy locations, and potential loot in the area. This can only be done from behind when you're undetected though. You can't hold up an enemy by aiming your gun at them like in MGS5. This makes interrogating enemies a tad irritating and makes you wonder why the takedowns from SGW2 came back. Both the interrogation and the takedown kill enemies, so I don't see why you would ever use the takedown from a practical gameplay perspective unless you were all out of suppressors. That's another thing lifted from MGS5 and done worse here. Guns are customizable and there's a good few to unlock, but you're quite limited. Most guns don't let you use all of the attachment slots, and a lot of the time you unlock statistically worse guns the further you go into the game. I wound up only using like 2 weapons because I didn't want to use an objectively worse option that I couldn't customize. As an aside, I believe snipers are the only weapons you can put a skin on, which is whack. However, most guns will let you equip a suppressor. I have no idea why you can't equip a suppressor on, at the very least, all of the snipers in this stealth sniper game, but I digress. The main reason this mechanic doesn't really matter and is worse than in MGS5, because if you hit what you're aiming at, there aren't enough enemies in one area to deplete your suppressor. You may be wondering, but this is a big open world. Surely I spend tons of time in the field like in MGS5 and I have to make do with the equipment I have, giving the player a choice between bringing large general armaments and specialized gear. Well, no. This is one of my main complaints with SGW3, a complaint I had in MGS5 but to a lesser degree. If you want to get through the story and do the main content, the game requires you go back to your base and plug in your computer to select the mission, and then the game will let you do it. Now, of course, you can fast travel, but if I'm just fast traveling back to base after every mission, then why isn't it just a select screen like in the first 2? This is an utterly useless open world with nothing in it except useless materials and a list of wanted targets who can mostly be killed during the main story missions. They're treated like a scary list of big baddies, but the ones who aren't optional objectives and main missions are just sitting in a cabin with like 2 other enemies. This is the very definition of half-baked. Not once did I willingly engage with the open world for any reason aside from making sure I experienced all the content for the review. Just as an aside, my use of the word willingly was not by accident. This game has the same problem as the GTA games, especially 5. The best gameplay is not driving the car, but it feels like that's what the devs want you to do all of the time. Reminder, you have to fast travel back to base after every mission to select a new one, and then you have to get in your car and drive to the mission. There's hardly any radio chatter or a fun conversation like in GTA, and the lines of dialogue that are present are bad and don't go on long enough to distract me from the mind-numbing drive. It was utterly exhausting playing through the last chapter of this game. I was done. I didn't want to play it anymore, but I still had to go back to base, select the mission, and drive the car. Why would I ever get in a car and do something I don't want to do?
That'd be ridiculous. I would never do that. I hate being employed.
Astaghfirullah, Spoopa.
Islam teaches us to value hard work, dedication, and discipline.
So you're telling me that if I do my best at work, even when I think the work is stupid, I'll be honoring Allah's teachings?
That's right. Follow Imam No Checkpoint for more lessons.
What the fuck was that?
Returning to our regularly scheduled whining, the story missions in this game are also quite half-baked. Most of them still fall into the linear trappings and uninspired designs of the previous games, but we also get my favorite type of missions in gaming, walking around and doing nothing and pretending I care about what's happening. Now, to be entirely fair, we don't get a lot of them, only like 3, but all of them are boring and painfully slow to get through. I have no idea why this game thinks it has an engaging story. I think the story this time around is the most invasive and worst executed of the entire series. All of these games essentially have the same story. There's a bad military doing evil things in a country that Americans probably aren't familiar with, and we gotta stop them. Also, along the way, there will be someone doing a traitor, and naturally the story necessitates that we kill him. In SGW 2, we actually get to shoot the bad guy ourselves, which is kind of a neat set piece I liked. In SGW 3, all we get to mix up the standard fare is our protagonist looking for his brother, and there's also like a thing with his kind of almost wife, and she's feisty and Russian, I think. Naturally, the brother turns out to be the big bad, and he's like a super soldier. Hey, this kind of sounds familiar. The game is not subtle about it either. The main character, whose name is John, by the way,
Hey, whatever, man. My name is John. J-O-N. John. There's no H.
is constantly begging Command to let him look for his brother. The game tries to make us care about this plot by having a few cutscenes of them as kids, and having John's brother accompany us in the first mission. As you probably expect, I could give a damn about this. What makes this so egregious is how this story is so simple a child could follow it, and still every piece of information feels like it's repeated 20 times from radio lines to cutscenes. They act like the twist of John's brother being alive and evil is actually a surprise to audiences, as if this wasn't the twist of the last 2 games. What sucks even harder is we don't even get to kill him. He's built up as this insane shooter now that he's genetically enhanced and he has like a super high-tech helmet, but the game ends with a cutscene and then credits roll. Quite a disappointment if you ask me. This is why I didn't talk about the actual plots of the other games. They're mostly 90s military jargon, and the few things they attempt to stand out fall flat on their face. Most importantly though, I do not care. I don't care about John's brother, I don't care about this wedding they make me walk around, I don't care about the separatists. These are all roadblocks and pop-ups that intercept all of the enjoyment I may have had with the mediocre gameplay.
To be as generous as possible, this is the best game in the series, in terms of gameplay, presentation, and story. To be as blunt as possible, we're 4 games in and this whole franchise is absolute mid at best and garbage at worst. I really don't understand.
I'm spooping it. Oh yeah, I'm spooping it. I'm spooping my spoop stick. Oh yeah, I'm straight spooping it. Oh, I'm going spoop mode.
What the fuck is happening?
Sniper Ghost Warrior 3 feels like it doesn't even come close to being what they wanted it to be, and a lot of the blame can be placed upon the shaky foundations they had to build upon. At the end of the day, all of these games are derived from Sniper Art of Victory, and playing them all you can definitely feel it. They get prettier, more polished, with more satisfying gunplay and grander levels, but they're still all a middling sniper game that feels like it's 2 lines of code away from breaking. As a whole, the series trends in the right direction, but doesn't come close to being something I'd actually go out of my way to play like Sniper Elite. If I was not making a video out of my experiences, I would not have finished any of these games, and I cannot recommend you to do it either. I honestly don't know if it comes off in my VO, but I'm pretty exacerbated with these games. It took a lot out of me. So, where does this leave us? Well, I got to clear up my Steam backlog, so I got something out of it, but aside from that, did I have fun? Were the games enjoyable? Well, almost. I obviously won't be telling anyone to buy SGW 1, 2, or Art of Victory, but 3 is so close to getting recommendation from me. Barring the technical issues, the game is fine, and on sale it's pretty cheap. Most of the issues I have with it, like the AI and level design, only stand out to me because I played 3 whole games with these issues, and I can see the remnants of them still bearing their ugly head. If you haven't played the other games and made a whole YouTube video about their problems, then Sniper Ghost Warrior 3 is probably good enough for like $10. Would you be better off buying Sniper Elite 4, MGS5, or even just Far Cry 3? Yeah, but a game doesn't have to be the best to be worth playing. If you've enjoyed those titles or have some interest, then SGW 3 is a fine purchase. Provided you're on a Super PC or a console, of course. Don't even think about the other games though, not even at bargain bin prices.
Well, that really wasn't that enjoyable. I think I'm going to play something I'll actually enjoy this time around.
I think I know what we should play.
God fucking damn it, not another one of you people.